All right. I think we are live, or I'm live. All right. Man, do I feel like crap. Holy man. I figured whatever it is that's going around right now, I've got it like a double dose of whatever the bug is that's going around. And man, did it kick my ass today. And I left work early. I didn't go into work. I work from home, but I was like, you know what? I'm calling it a day. I ended up sleeping for like 5 hours, and then after that, I'm like, okay, well now I'm going to be awake all night, so I might as well, jump on YouTube or something to waste some time. Anyways, uh, all right. Good to see we have a few people watching. Thank you for tuning in and checking out. Gonna go over couple collection updates that we have here, and what else? Gonna go over. I watched the Wham documentary on Netflix, New Year's weekend. That was pretty good, and so we're gonna check that out. Wilson, thank you for tuning in, man. Um, yeah, and then I have some things to complain about too. So not going to be a long stream, but going to go over a few things. Whatever it is that I have this like fake congestion going on, can't breathe. Plus, I snore, so it's just I can only imagine what it must sound like for someone else when it's like, okay, I normally snore, but then when I also can't breathe at the same time, I woke myself up plenty of times just gasping for air. Um, and then the type of thing too, like when you're congested, but then you wake up at 3 in the morning with like snot all over your face, snot all over the pillow. So that's what I last night was like, and this afternoon. No matter what medicine I take or something, just doesn't really seem to do much. It's kind of like it's just temporary. Like, okay, so you drink some NyQuil and then you feel better for like a half an hour, and then you're back to being like, how crappy you felt before. Um, but yeah, and then of course, being as congested as I am, I'm making food. I can't smell anything. It's amazing though that when my cat goes and then he destroys his litter box, I can still smell that. Something about that can still break through the barrier of, you know, my congestion, the filth coming from my cat's litter box. Oh yeah, that's perfectly fine. I can catch a whiff of that, but man, oh, it sucks. I get sick like twice a year, and when I do, it's kind of like the world is coming to an end. Who do we have here? Willie K. Thank you for tuning in. You are sick of stupid BS. Yes, I am sick of stupid BS. Absolutely. Stupid BS. Speaking of stupid BS, one thing that I'm going to do another video later. I did a live stream last week talking about the scam going on in the vinyl community for vinyl collectors, CD collectors, where scammers reseal something and then sell it as like, oh, it's sealed. Um, and it's kind of obsessive compulsive. If anyone's interested in it, I think definitely check the stream out. You can fast forward probably about, I rant for like about 15 minutes beforehand, but then I really spent about 45 minutes analyzing different types of shrink wrapping technology, methods for shrink wrapping. It's just a fantastic conversation that I'm sure anyone would want to tune in and listen to. But I seriously think that it is something. For all of the years that I've been buying physical media and collecting and obsessing over details, that's one thing that I've never heard anyone talk about: sellers who reseal records and CDs and then sell it like, oh, it's sealed. You know, never once have I seen something about like aftermarket reseal or anything like that. It's definitely it's a big scam. I think we should start calling people out. I'm going to do a follow-up video on that because the CD that I opened on stream, which is the where is it? Yeah, this one, Megadeth. Killing is my business. Business is good. I bought this sealed. Um, and the seller's like, first press, blah blah blah. Well, finally, I found out which pressing this is, and yeah, perfect case in point of the whole resealing bogus seller. Although it still is awesome album artwork, though. I still love the whole like just like Polaroid quality photography on it, and it took all of like 5 minutes for studio design and things like that. I am going to do a follow-up video on that. But yeah, people need to start becoming more of a skeptic when someone, oh, here's this OG record. It's sealed. It's 40 years old and it's sealed, really? Because in the 80s, 90s, even early 2000s, before eBay, before Discogs, people bought music to listen to it. They didn't buy it just to hold on to it and flip it. Especially going back to the 80s and 90s. So anyone who's like, "Oh, I have this huge collection of all these rare OGs and they're all sealed." Really? Really? Um and what do we have here? Rick's in the chat. Rick, thank you for tuning in. Nothing like a Thursday night of beer and a ranch show. Yeah, yeah, so sober January. Sober January. What is today is the 4th. So sober January for me lasted 3 days. Um eh, hey, I went into it with good spirits. I went into it you know good intentions. I'm gonna and but then again, the whole thing with sober January is that nobody says that, well, sober January means all of January. It's sober January just could be an afternoon in January, something like that. Next time we got a record in a shrink that might be valuable, but not sure if it's factory shrink. And of our hang to do the unveiling. Yeah, yeah. You know what, Rick? I forget if I think maybe you were in the chat for the sealing live stream. The biggest giveaway is the type of shrink wrap. If it's stiffer, and if the edges, if the seam for the edges are all along the edge of the like this one right here, this nausea demos. This is a perfect example of what someone who's resealing something, of what they're capable of doing in their house, because they don't have machinery to seal something like how something that's factory sealed would, but a heat gun shrink wrap device that you would use at home. The seam is always along the edges, and then most times you'll also have the overlap too. And then also the shrink wrap too is it's the heat gun will make it really tight to the CD or the record. So yeah, you're probably getting screwed over, Rick. I probably. Good thing I rarely drink. I drink like 2 drinks a month. Yeah. Yeah, well, all right. Well, all right, Wilson. Yeah, yeah, Marty's in chat, or it's a person's name, January, who happens to be sober. Yeah, right? Imagine that. Imagine that. Someone some sober January. What a name to have. That's kind of like when parents name their kids after a celebrity or something like that. I worked with this guy one time years ago. This guy was a mess, and his name was Ronald McDonald. Okay, so I worked with this guy. This was a long time ago in this print shop that I worked in, and this guy he smoked a pack a day on a light day. if a day when he was smoking heavy, it would probably be like 2 packs a day. I mean, the dude was going outside every 20 minutes for another cigarette. He was he was like probably about 50, but going on 85 in terms of health, fitness, and appearance. It was just amazing. Just like this heavy he'd been a chain smoker like since he was probably 12 years old. Like no joke. He even said once he's been smoking since he was like 12 or 13. Been a chain smoker since then. He had that smoker's skin, like people who are just chain smokers for their entire lives. They have that heavy leathery skin with like the pores and like the bags under their eyes, and their eyes are permanently bloodshot. I mean, this guy was just an absolute disaster, and a raging alcoholic too. It was guaranteed. I was in the same office with him for like 2.5 years. Any company event, holiday party, something wherever there was booze, you could plan on him making an ass of himself, groping a woman. It's like, I mean, looking back now, guys like that don't exist anymore in corporate America. This was definitely of a different time. But Ronald McDonald was his name. Don't ever call him Ronald though. It was Ron. You had to call him Ron. He would like stare daggers through you if you ever called him Ronald McDonald. But yeah, same thing. Sober January, Ron McDonald, things like that. Drag queens. It seems like drag queens always come up with really creative names. I had a friend who was in town for New Year's, and her and a couple of her friends for New Year's Eve, they went out to this drag show, and they were asked me if I wanted to come. I was like, no, I don't want to go to a drag show. Not my thing. Nothing against the lifestyle or the interest or anything like that. It's just drag shows just aren't my thing. Kind of like there are a lot of other things that also aren't my thing, like the Golden Corral all you can eat buffet. That's another thing that's just not my thing. I've never been one for all you can eat buffets. I think all it is it's just a trough of bacteria and filth and disgusting people. And like, why would I want to share the same space with these type of people? Especially there's always some kid who's like has snot all over his hands, who just goes and just grabs things with his bare hands. I think all you can eat buffets are absolutely disgusting. The quality of food is just less than poor. And then what's worse too about the all you can eat buffet is when I go on, I can't ever stick to a consistent sort of meal type. Instead, it just ends up being this weird plate full of weird things, like oh, here's macaroni and cheese and chocolate pudding, and then sweet and sour chicken, and then some an egg roll, and just this weird combination of things. Yeah, so all you can eat buffets, I think those are kind of going on the are becoming a thing of the past with COVID, and people just becoming more aware of filth and diseases and things like that. And I just always thought of like the all you can eat buffet is just an incubator of just filth and disgust and bacteria. So where was I going with that before I started? Oh, not my thing. So yeah, drag shows, not my thing. Not it. I've been to drag shows before. There's nothing about a drag show that interests me. But drag queens are always good at coming up with names about like for their drag persona and something creative, and it's always kind of like clever wordplay of something. Yeah. Yeah. Hello, Chris. Get better soon. Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Marty. Yeah, I feel like absolute crap. Boy, do I feel like crap today. Nausea demo's nice. When I was young, I was all nausea. NY is best. And I'm all, yeah, nausea LA is what I'm into, dude. Because that was nausea LA, and I think that they have. I think I have every official release that has been put out. I think they have like more demos out than they do of actual albums, but they're all good. I've always been a fan of the Nausea LA. I think Nausea LA too is Oscar, the original vocalist for Terrorizer. I think Nausea. I think when he left Terrorizer, um, or when he was kicked out of Terrorizer, I think maybe that's what the story was. And then Nausea was his next thing. But yeah, Nausea, LA. Yeah, I also have this other demos right here. Or no, this one I think there's an album, The Suffering Continues. Yeah, this is a really good one. Yeah, I think this is yeah, these are three demos. 91, 92, and then 93, 94. I guess I could have just said 91 through 94. But yeah, so this is three demos. I've listened to it already. Kind of lo-fi, definitely definitely something a completist would want, you know. Um, but yeah, Nausea LA, good stuff. There was that world contamination, I think was. They haven't put anything out anytime recently at all. I wonder what happened to Nausea. I should look into them. I already broke my New Year's resolution to smell those tamales overpower. Yeah, yeah. So this is another thing too. New Year's resolution. So sober January lasted 3 days. My thing is going to be diet and exercise, and portion control. That's something I have issue with. Portion control, because my upbringing, I come from a family of lazy fat people. Like lazy fat people who have no clue of what it means to exercise. The idea of moderation just doesn't exist. It's not, never got the memo on moderation. Um, wasteful spending is a trait that's common among my bloodline. Shocker there, right? But yeah, I come from a family of lazy fat people. And when I was younger, when I lived in New York, there was a point when I was really thin. And I was riding my bike all around the city. I'd ride my bike like 9 miles a day, and I was like 170 pounds. And then I left New York, moved to North Carolina, and it's amazing how suddenly I just started, I was introduced to Southern food, biscuits and gravy. Boy, do I love some biscuits and gravy, and delicious IPAs. I think the North Carolina craft beer scene is much more tempting. And I indulged frequently, and what did you know it? And then COVID hit, and here I am at like about 240, 250 pounds. So 2024, so yeah, 2024 will be the year when I learn about eating in moderation, portion control, and I revert back to my younger self with exercise. Um, Although I feel like if I started exercising and eating healthy and drinking less, then I would betray everybody in the metal community and the vinyl community. Like I would feel like everyone would look at me as like a traitor. Like, who's that middle-aged white guy? Who does he think he is? Trying to get in shape. You need to be like the rest of us and overweight and just sit in a dark room listening to evil black metal all day. Who do you think you are? Um, but yeah, buffets can be very expensive. Well, a good buffet is in Las Vegas. They have some pretty crazy buffets in Las Vegas, but then also too, it's the type of thing where um, you go and you pay like $60-$70 for the buffet, but now your pressure is like, okay, I got to get my money's worth, so I'm going to sit here and cram down 4 lobster tails covered in butter. I mean, it ends up becoming a competition to see how much you can eat to get your money's worth. The band, I like Dairy Queen, the band Queen, and drag. Somebody to tell her further what. Yeah, all right, okay, all right, Rick. Yeah, nauseas, extinction, nauseas, crimes against humanity. Yeah, Nausea, L.A., crimes against humanity. That is a really good album. Um, yes, who wins? Right, right. Um, finish your plate and that you don't eat enough. Yeah, exactly. And again, me coming from the family of lazy fat people, you know, I always came from the upbringing of like, oh, you're hungry, well, eat more. Oh, here, have like a scoop, an extra scoop of mashed potatoes with even more gravy on top of it, and and then a mother who cooks everything in butter and extra butter, and and she discovered the secret. This is one thing she discovered, and this was recent, is that she discovered um her secret trick for making the best macaroni salad is to use half and half, not mayonnaise. Okay, so like, okay, I mean macaroni salad. Don't get me wrong. I love some macaroni salad. I do, especially in the summertime. If you have some burgers, some sausages, whatever, and some macaroni salad on the side with some cheese in it and some onions and all of that, it's good stuff. But that's how my mother can just, oh, so it's not doesn't have enough fat and calories and sodium in it. Well, I can take that up a notch. I can one up you in terms of fat content, calorie content, and all of that. Yeah, so that's the type of family I come from. Um, yeah, family full of lazy fat people. Visit practically when I was in the USA mid. Yeah, I'm telling you, man. Ooh, best biscuits and gravy that I've had in Asheville, North Carolina. Um, there's this old timey, um, cafe uh, place called Mayfell's. Best homemade biscuits, the gravy, the sausage and gravy. Get that with some scrambled eggs and some hash browns, and I mean you'll eat that and you'll be full for an entire day. But ooh, that is good stuff. That is really good stuff. Tom is in the chat. Good evening. I would be svelte if I was only 240. I dream of being 240. It's, well, okay, so here's the thing. I kind of felt good. Uh some people, I kind of went through this like hibernation phase because I was looking for a new job. And I ended up getting an interview for a new job that I really wanted. So but I'm at that really just on the fence of where, you know, I can buy my pants and shirts at a normal store, but ooh, if I just gain 1 extra pound, then now I need to start going to the specialty stores. And that's where it is just like, it could be just like uh the a day of the week. Where am I at? Can I buy pants at a normal store, or do I need to go to the specialty store and get the husky pants, or something like that? And so I had an in-person interview after 3 virtual interviews. Then now I have a 4th in-person interview, and I'm like, all right, well, I need to go out and buy a blazer and a nice shirt and all of that type of stuff, and look presentable. The type of clothes, I ended up spending almost $600 on something that I'll only ever wear once. But I got the job, so it pays off. But more about that later. But I went to that store DXL, which is that for plus for men's marketing. It's just called what, Big and Tall. It's a Big and Tall store. DXL. I went there and they're like, oh, we don't have anything in your. I was trying everything on and everything was too large for me, and I'm like, And then she took my measurements and she was like, "No, we don't have anything in your size. You're not, you're," she said I was too thin for to shop at DXL. I'm like, okay. And I felt good. I was like, all right, yeah, I'm not a morbid, I'm not, like, I'm not like one of those guys who has four chins or anything yet, but I was too thin to shop at DXL. But then the problem with that is that then when I would go to like somewhere else, I'm too fat to fit into the clothes. So I ended up finally finding a sport coat. Where was it? Somewhere else. Men's Warehouse. I think that's I think that's where I went. You'll like the way you look. Yeah, it was Men's Warehouse is where I went. I found like that right in between type of size. Anyways, enough with my sport coat. Um, yeah, I am so congested. I am gonna let me blow my nose for a second here. All right, boy, I am hit me hard today. On the news, they're like, "Oh, there's a new COVID variant around, but the pandemic is over." Well, then why are you calling it a COVID variant? Because immediately that's what we associate. Whenever you say COVID, we immediately think of the pandemic. Why don't you just call it the flu? Oh, tamales are good. Tamales are really good. Wilson, yeah, yeah, yeah. I bet in Canada you probably don't get things like tamales and stuff. And I wonder what the Mexican food scene is like. Is in Canada. I think of Canadian food. And I'm not going to pull out the poutine joke. That's the big thing. Like here in America, oh, did you eat some poutine while you were up there? But I picture like Canadian cuisine being a lot of stuff like deer meat, venison, even other stuff like elk. Like I am absolutely sure that any of the Canadians in the chat right now, Jason is here. I'm sure you guys have grew up and you're like, oh yeah, mom could make throw some elk on the grill and it was so and it was so good, hey. So yeah, yep, yep, I hear you. Big and tall store where they only sell pleated khakis and bowling shirts with flames. Yeah. Oh man, the bowling shirts with flames and double pleated khakis. That is a good look. That is a good look with some white New Balance. Yeah, yeah. That's the thing about when I was in DXL looking for stuff. Suddenly, I just felt like I think right after that, I got like an AARP postcard in the mail. Like the AARP, they're hunting me down. They're like, I'm on their radar. They're like, you can't escape from us. We know where you live. Like, no, I don't want to get this stuff in the mail. Stop. Jason in the chat. Good to see you, man. Yeah, Jason. Speaking of Terrorizer, I just saw your one video you had like an hour ago where you were flexing World Downfall. Really awesome album. Love that album. So good. But yeah, Oscar, who was the vocalist on World Downfall, is the guy who then started Nausea LA. I'm pretty sure that's the connection. Tamale, okay, yeah, all right. I don't need to bring every chat up on screen. Oh man, cold over the holidays. Oh, dude, it started for me. It started 2 days ago when I felt something in my throat, and then today is the day when it just really kicked my ass. Um, Deer, elk, venison in rural areas, but I had an elk burger and it tastes great. Oh man, we just eat McDonald's. Okay, all right, I'm cool with that. I'm cool with that. Yeah, there's this prototype McDonald's here in Chicago called Cosmic Cosmic something or other, and it's sort of like it's targeted towards millennials, and it's like they have like avocado toast. Um, shit like that. It's and then it has some sort of like Art Deco interior or something. It's yeah, I don't know. I'm not. And there's also like a 4 hour wait. Like I'm not going to wait 4 hours just to eat McDonald's. Poutine tacos, best of both worlds. Wow. God, that sounds heavy. Gravy, cheese, fries, and as a taco. Like, oh man, that sounds like it'd be too much. Canadian. Your parents used to run a Canadian Chinese restaurant, basically chop suey and chow mein stuff. You know what I've always wondered? What is chop suey? I feel like chop suey, sort of at my job, I look through a lot of old archival footage from, the early 1900s and stuff. And there was the whole, like, the West Coast Chinese migration, California, and there's a whole big story there to unpack, but that's when Chinese business owners started to open Chinese restaurants, and chop suey was the big thing that everyone had that was advertised everywhere was chop suey. But I don't even really know what chop suey is. It's yeah, it's yeah, yeah, you do need that, man. You need that on wax. The earache, the FDR reissue of that one I've heard is supposed to sound pretty good. The one plus of all the earache FDR issues is that the audio quality, it's it's like original sound quality. It's not some brick walled remastered garbage typically. So wanting to speaking of earache reissues, and this is I pulled this one out to show it. I've been reflecting on my relationship with Napalm Death over the years. And Napalm Death are one of those bands where the the consensus, the general consensus of their best album, I take issue with. Um Seems like everyone just showers praise on Scum. I think Scum is unlistenable. Um especially the first side. The second side, there but there's a lot of history with Scum. But I've never really been into Scum. From Enslavement to Obliteration, I always felt was the first real Napalm Death album, which still when I heard that for the first time, I was like, what is this wall of noise that I'm listening to? It's I think my nipples started to get a little hard when I heard it for the first time. And but then Lee Dorian left Napalm Death, and Barney joined. And I've always said this, that my favorite era of Napalm Death is early Barney, because then you have, well, with Lee, after From Enslavement to Obliteration, they did there is an EP, was it Mass Appeal Madness? Um there was like a 4 song EP. I have it. It's the one that has You Suffer on it. But yeah, then there I think Utopia Banished was the first Barney album. That, and then the one that has like the side of the face on it. I think maybe that was anyways, I've always said early Barney is my favorite era of Napalm Death. But then I started to kind of reflect on Napalm Death even more. And Earache just reissued this, and I'm really happy about it. And I can honestly, I've been listening to this. When this album came out, I listened to it like crazy. I think it was a great album, and it was sort of a time in their career when Napalm Death were still making real metal, but they were also changing their sound and getting more of a groove. And that is Fear, Emptiness, Despair. I think this album is just so awesome. It really is. I think this is, and nobody really talks about this one at all. It's kind of like it just, whenever people talk about Napalm Death, it's always, Scum and Scum, and then more. Let's talk about Scum some more. I think Fear, Emptiness, Despair is just such a solid album. It really is. From front to back. Now, this is, um, of course, it's a very lazy reissue. So lazy, in fact. Now, like right here, I have, this is an OG CD. And then this is from last year. They did Eric started doing their like vinyl on demand thing where like they would, send them a note out like, hey, take a vote. If we get enough people to pre-order, then they'll do a print, a pressing of it. And I've never had this on vinyl, but I was like, holy shit, I'd love to get that on vinyl. Wherever it is where Earache is pressing their vinyl on demand pressings, they do absolute a shit job with their vinyl pressings. There another vinyl on demand pressing that I've gotten 2 copies of, was the Bolt Thrower Live War vinyl on demand pressing that they did. And it is a fucking joke at just how terrible that pressing was. Just crap, just like smuts in the stamper. Um, the first pressing, the first Live War that I got had 5 like things where shit was in the stamper. Uh, and then so they sent me a replacement where it was still like, okay, it was better, but still shitty. This one, it's still, wherever it is, wherever they're doing these vinyl on demand pressings at, there's like no quality control. And one thing that's also kind of like disappointing about this, because Earache does do the laziest reissues, um, is um, the original CD was a 5-color print job, and Rick is probably the only person who knows what I'm talking about, where it's 4-color, it's CMYK ink, but then there's a 5th color, a Pantone that they used for the gray, um, for the title, and then you can also see it. It's called like a spot color, and so you can see like that gray isn't a typical CMYK ink. It's a special, it's a special ink. And so that's what they did for the original CD. And when it was first released, I think it was only on CD and tape. I don't think that there was an LP, because it came out during that time in like the mid 90s. But for this vinyl on demand, that's just regular CMYK ink that um they didn't pay. They couldn't even be bothered to pay for the 5th color for the silver. So instead now it's just this cyan that just blends right in with the background. It doesn't pop at all. God, Earache is just the worst label, I swear. So yeah, but either way, happy to have that on vinyl, because it is a very solid album. Um, was it Harmony Corruption is the first one with Barney? Yeah, Harmony Corruption is the one that is red with the side of the face. Yeah, that's a good one. I think that one, God, I haven't listened to that in so long. I think that was kind of more of like an EP. Um, but yeah, my first was Fear, Emptiness, Despair through Columbia House. Yeah, yeah, Fear, Emptiness, Despair. Like that song "Hung." They had a video for that on MTV on Headbangers Ball. But yeah, Fear, Emptiness, Despair is okay, but their next 2 aren't good. Yeah, Diatribes and Greed Killing. They're the Screaming Face albums, because the album artwork is also very, the album artwork is very 90s graphic design. No mistaking that at all. Especially is it Diatribes, the one that's like purple and green. Although, but a lot of that, like, well, that color palette is coming back now, but that style of design, well, even what they did with the band name here, the way they stretched the font out, that looks so stupid. Whoever did that had just like, But that's what they did at the time. 90s graphic design is just awful. Um, yeah, Diatribes, Greed Killing, and I think there was also an EP that was in the mix there. I have that in a CD, a 90s release. Yeah, yeah. This one, 94, 1994 is when this came out. So yeah, way better than Diatribes. Yeah. Yeah, because you know what? I think there was Diatribes and then there was um a follow-up to Diatribes. Greed Killing. Does that sound familiar? Um yeah. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I'm sure that that's I need to go back and listen to those. And maybe I might pick them up on vinyl because I remember Earache that like those albums were in the the vinyl on demand. I'm sitting here shitting on the quality of the vinyl on demand press things, and then I'm like, oh yeah, I need to buy those. So yeah, so for extra plate usually meant for solid flood color area. Yeah, yeah, I like it though. I do. They should have stuck with that. So let me get a swig of my beer. Oh, that's good. So for sober January, instead, what I'm going to do is I'm gonna do light beer January instead. So I'm gonna give up the IPAs and all the heavy craft beers, um, and then I'm just gonna stick to light beer. That's my compromise for sober January. Is just stick to the 4.5% beers and not the 7% ones. I think that's a good trade off. Um, so yeah, what was it? Words from the Exit Wound. Yeah, and the art direction for all of those, the screaming face, and then there's one. I think Words from the Exit Wound was the one where there's like another screaming face, but then someone like a diver jumping out of it or something. Um, Greed Killing was the EP around Diatribes. They had a CD release of Diatribes with a space for Greed. Yeah, that's right. Because I think that there were some of those where it was the deluxe edition where you could get Greed Killing CD and Diatribes in the same package. I think that's what they were doing for those. Yeah, you know what? Let's let me share my screen here real fast. I think maybe we might let's see here. All right. Here we go. Okay, so this is from the other night. Napalm Death. Let's take a look at Peel Sessions. Yes. I have an OG sealed of this one. Vinyl. Okay, Harmony Corruption. This was the first Barney album, then Utopia Banished, Live Corruption. Yeah, yeah. And you know what? That reminds me because I can't remember if I showed this off because another album that came out right around that time, which is bootlegged in Japan. Um, this is like a live album that has a lot of the songs off of Fear, Emptiness, Despair, a lot of the Greed Killing. This is a live album that was a lot of what they were playing at the time. Live Corruption. Yeah, I want to get that one. Fear, Emptiness, Despair. Yeah, Diatribes. Inside the Torn Apart. I forgot about that one, but that is also 97. Bootlegged in Japan. No vinyl release for that one. They should do that. Words from the Exit Wound. Okay, so from 98 to 2000, this is when Enemy of the Music Business. I remember. I think I have this one on CD. I can't remember. Um, I think this is when they started to kind of go back to their earlier style that they were known for. Same with Order of the Leech. But yeah, I think for some people this is kind of like a an era that for some fans is kind of forgettable, but then other people like I want to start revisiting all of these albums. Yeah. Wow, double 10-inch from 1995. Wow. Um, yeah. I'm gonna have to pick those up because I'd like to start listening to those albums again. All right. Recent pickups. So, here's one. I'm excited about this one. This is a pickup, a box set that I just got last week in the mail, and this is Black Sabbath Technical Ecstasy Super Deluxe. Um, and then everyone is just like, "What?" um, this album has really grown on me over time, and I'm kind of like, you know, this is the way I feel about Ozzy Black Sabbath. Is I've always said Sabotage is my favorite. Um, you know, it's kind of more. I've always kind of liked the sound of when there was more dysfunction in the band. I mean, yes, the first four albums, that's the classic Sabbath sound that influenced so many bands. Yes, I know that. The problem is that I've heard them too many times. There's you know, I've heard those albums too many times, especially the first two. The first three really. Um, they just don't do anything for me anymore. Um, Now, I have been a technical ecstasy and never say die apologist because I think that those two albums they're definitely the ones that people forget about out of the original Ozzy lineup. Um, but Technical Ecstasy has some really good songs on it, and nobody really gives it a chance because I think because they start to lose interest once It's All Right comes on, which is more of like a like when Kiss did that song Beth, which I think is what it was, is that okay, the drummer from Kiss, Peter Criss, was singing a ballad. So then Black Sabbath was like, well, you know what? Bill Ward should sing a song. And so that's what It's All Right is. And I think they rarely ever played it live. There is a YouTube clip of them playing It's All Right live, and it's Bill Ward doing drums and vocals, singing It's All Right, which I think is pretty impressive. Um, Also, one thing that was never talked about is Guns N' Roses covered that song. When the Guns N' Roses live album that they put out after Use Your Illusions 1 and 2, um, there's a live version of It's All Right that Axl sang with, and he played piano. I can't remember if they recorded It's All Right in the studio. Maybe they did, and it was on Spaghetti Incident, possibly, or it could have been on one of the Use Your Illusions um, albums. Which, going back to Use Your Illusions 1 and 2, they didn't need two albums. They could have cut half of the, gotten rid of half of those songs and just made just an album called Use Your Illusion, and then maybe just have a couple good B-sides. Yeah, because there's no reason why they needed to release two albums. But so Technical Ecstasy, I got this because there's a Steve Wilson remaster that I've really wanted to hear, that I've heard some really good things about. Um, so I've been eager to hear that. There are actually three different remasters of Technical Ecstasy in this box set, plus a double live album. So it's 5 LPs. And I think it is. I've never been a big fan of live albums, but for Sabbath, I definitely like hearing them do obscure songs live. Like when they were touring for this album and they were playing, or songs from Sabotage, or because they never play it. I mean, you're yeah, because what do they have here for the live ones? There's Live World Tour 76, 77, and Symptom of the Universe, War Pigs, Gypsy, Black Sabbath, All Moving Parts Stand Still, Dirty Women, Drum Solo, Electric Funeral, Snowblind, and Children of the Grave. So what I think is really, well, Backstreet Kids is a really good song off of this one. Gypsy is a very good song. I think Gypsy is an excellent song. And Dirty Women is another really good song. Actually, Dirty Women is a very good song. She's Gone has like this really kind of like spooky sort of, the song's not gonna like blow you off of your feet. The song kind of feels like filler at first, but then when you listen to it more, there's like this really kind of just interesting synthesizer in it that I think is pretty interesting. Um, All Moving Parts Stand Still is a pretty good song. Give Technical Ecstasy a listen, seriously. I think a lot of, and the thing is when I tell people that I've been listening to this, they're like, "Oh God, I haven't listened to that album in like 20 years." Well, then get it out and listen to it. Like it really is. It's a very good. It's a good album, and yes, even Ozzy himself has shit on it and said that he hated it. And okay, that's fine. But also too, this was going back to the time when there was just a lot of dysfunction in the band, and drug use was out of control, and things like that. So these box sets, and I'm really like looking forward to more of these box sets. I heard that there's a super deluxe that's supposed to come out for Born Again, um, like with a new remaster by Tony Iommi, or I think maybe a remaster by Tony Iommi. But it's a really solid hardbound book, with just a lot of like really high quality print job. Really just a lot of like really cool stuff about that era. Um, and then it has a replica of what the tour program was like at the time, which is really cool. And they were all wearing white on stage. What else? And it has a poster, full size poster of the album artwork, which I think is really, it's awesome album artwork. The guy who did the album artwork for Technical Ecstasy also did a lot of other stuff. Like he did artwork for Yes, and for a lot of other bands. He's actually like a really renowned graphic artist for the time. So I think it's really awesome album art. And then there are the 5 LPs. So this was a nice addition to the collection. Very happy to have this. Some of the other super deluxes that they put out, the Sabotage one, I have the CD version of that. I think that was just a really lazy. I was really disappointed with that one because I was hoping for like some good demos from that era, and maybe some alternate mixes, and it's just another remaster, which, it's like remasters are like a dime a dozen nowadays, unless it's done by someone like Bernie Grunman or whoever. But then it's one CD that just has two songs on it, which are the 7-inch from Am I Going Insane? And then there's a double live album, which is a bootleg that has already been released before. So it was like I didn't bother spending $100 for that on vinyl, because it's like not a big deal. The Super Deluxe for Paranoid, I would buy that on vinyl, but the thing is that I think I would rather just buy. Well, there is a quad fold down, because back in the day when there were the quad pressings coming out with the quad channel, 4 channel um mixes that were released, when um there is that were released on vinyl. um yeah, I thought Roger Dean did the cover. I can't remember. He did some of the stuff, but I'm gonna do a follow-up video later on Technical Ecstasy, because I also have two different CDs of it. This is like one of the original CDs from back in the day, and then this is the 2016 Digipack reissue. But yeah, the Paranoid one, I didn't really rush to get that, because they're also just I have like another version of that I'm fine with. The Volume 4, I would like to get the Super Deluxe of Volume 4, because I heard that's a good one to have, but they're kind of hard to come by, and for some odd reason they're just unusually expensive, especially the CDs, the CD version. If I can find like the Volume 4 Super Deluxe on vinyl, I would pick that up. But yeah, I'm definitely really looking forward to a Sabbath Bloody Sabbath. A Super Deluxe of that, I think, would be a good pickup to have. I'm sure they'll eventually reissue all of them as Super Deluxe at some point. Um, Born Again, and then Never Say Die Super Deluxe. I'm all over that Never Say Die Super Deluxe, definitely, because man, do I love that album. Roger Dean, yeah, the the guy who did the album cover for Technical Ecstasy. I haven't read the whole background yet on it, but I will. I will. I need to blow my nose. Hold on one second. All right. That was one of those ones where it's like, okay, time to flush all the shit out of my sinuses. But yeah, so all right, another pickup. Um Haunted Hotel Records just reissued this, the Gore Beyond Necropsy um Noise a Go Go. This has never been available on vinyl before. I bought two copies because there was one on black, which of course I got the black, but then there was also like a pink one that I figured out what the hell, I'll be trendy and buy the trendy colored version. Um, and yeah, really happy to have this on vinyl finally, because I love this album. It's so awful. It's just such a terrible album. Uh, really happy to have that one. And then I picked up the Van Halen one, Mobile Fidelity one step. Um, Happy to have this. I also ordered the Super Audio CD for this, but it's not available yet, so I'll get that later. Um, yeah, Van Halen stuff. Van Halen will always have a special place in my heart for me. All right, so Wham. Changing topics. Let's chat about Wham, shall we? Um, I watched on Netflix over the weekend. There's a new Wham documentary on Netflix that's very good, and it's kind of spooky in a way. Um, where I learned a lot about Wham. Um, and I've said this before. I've said this many times. Like sort of like George Michael is kind of like my Morrissey. I've always liked George Michael, especially Wham. Yeah, the other guy, Andrew Ridgeley, which from watching the documentary, I never knew much about the history of Wham. I just always knew of it as George Michael and the other guy. Um, Andrew Ridgeley turns out was kind of more of the brains behind Wham. And I didn't know this, but George Michael, whose real name is like this super long Greek name, um, and Andrew Ridgeley were childhood friends who from elementary school, high school, everything, they would have like all these bands or whatever. And then they started um, writing songs, pop songs in the very early 80s. And the very early Wham, like their first album, Fantastic, has that sound. And I've always kind of been interested in sort of the sound of when disco was dead, but there was still sort of that synthesizer, kind of like the type of sound that was going to become big in the 80s of like loud keyboards and loud synths and stuff is more dancey and up tempo, but disco was dead. So like the groove that came along with disco, that's gone, but now things are getting more poppy, a little more high energy, you know. And Wham to me are one of those bands, like their first album, Fantastic, really that whole type of, I don't want to say it's not the new romantic sound, but just sort of that time, I would say from 1978 to 1983, when dance music was just, and dancey pop music was at this weird time, when people really didn't know what direction it was going in. And yeah, so I learned that Andrew Ridgeley and George Michael were childhood friends. Wham was literally a garage band at a point, which was kind of blew my mind. I had no idea that they were writing Wham songs in their bedroom. George Michael, they were watching a soccer match, and George Michael had an idea that popped in his head, ran upstairs, and recorded the vocals for Last Christmas. I mean, that blew my mind because I love Last Christmas. I think Last Christmas is the best Christmas song, and it's a great song too. And the video, it's just I love the video for it too. Um, but yeah, I was really surprised. And so the Netflix documentary about Wham, it's archival footage, and um Andrew Ridgeley's mother, she kept newspaper clippings and all kinds of things like that from over the years. And, um, so it's like a sort of a montage of all of that type of stuff. But the dialogue is Andrew Ridgeley and George Michael. But the thing is, George Michael died in 2016. So it was kind of weird having George Michael have this new documentary out, but these must have been like old interviews that now were brought to life post mortem. But hearing George Michael narrate his career and Wham, but he's been dead since 2016. So it was a really good documentary. Yeah, George Michael did die on Christmas Day. Yeah. He Oh, absolutely. No, there's no better Christmas song than Last Christmas. And, again, George Michael and Andrew Ridgeley wrote that song. They didn't have a team of writers writing their songs, and they wrote it themselves, which I think is really impressive, especially at that time. They were early 20s. I think they started Wham when they were like 19. Um so yeah, really good documentary. Really good. It's a funny story. I remember when George Michael publicly came out as being gay, in his, his solo career, this girl who I was hanging around with out with at the time, long time ago, she was a big George Michael fan, loved George Michael, and she was devastated when he came out as gay. She was in denial. She was like, George Michael is not gay. She's only saying that because his fan base is gay and he wants to. But then I'm kind of like, well, think about that for a second, you know. But no, she was in such denial. She was so pissed because she had the biggest crush on George Michael. But it gave me a good idea for a Halloween costume this year, of where maybe like I'll find like a leather fringe half jacket and wear that with aviators and then chaps and cowboy boots. There is Oh, she was shocked that he was gay, had no clue at all. Um anyways, think I'm about to call it a night, but I am going to do a follow-up video on the Megadeth album that I opened up. Killing is my business. I got the dirt on this pressing, and I'm going to do a follow-up video on technical ecstasy and why everyone should give technical ecstasy a chance. It's 2024, it's a new year, so that means it's time to rediscover technical ecstasy, and I encourage everyone to do so. All right, thank you for watching, and we'll all chat again soon. Thanks.